Yo, have you had your dose of pep today? No? Don't worry. I got you. Let's go. Happy Monday, fine people of the world. Welcome to your weekly dose of pep. This is episode 17 of the Pep Talk podcast, and I'm your host, Coach Jay. It is the mission of this podcast to cheer you on and to coach you up. We do that by coming to you weekly with this podcast that is designed to provide you with topics to think about and grow from during the week. We also provide daily pep on social media that you can view on Instagram at _JB Speaks or now on TikTok at Pep Talk Pod. In the grand scheme of life, what matters is how you love others and how you're working to grow yourself. You, yes, you have been packed. Like I'm talking filled to the brim with so much potential. Yes, it takes work to bring it to pass, but the work is always worth it. So if nobody has told you on this Monday, or whenever you're listening to this podcast, or however you're listening to this podcast, you're loved, you're important, you were necessary, and you were gifted. Don't dim your light, but let that sucker shine and shine bright. Now, to recap last week, I started a bit of a passion project of sorts. I wanted to create some space to speak to the men out there because I think that while there are a lot of voices out there speaking, many are speaking at us instead of speaking to us because they don't know us. And knowing how difficult it is to define manhood, much less to live it out, it's important for me to build men up and to see us developed. And listen, I'm not coming to you from a position of authority, like I'm not at this whole other level. I'm coming to you in the role of a brother, of a friend, one who desires to see you living out an authentic and realistic definition of what manhood is. And even as I learn and as I grow, my mission is that we can learn and grow together. And here's what I know. I know that my children deserve to see what a man is. Like my sons deserve to see manhood lived out in front of them. My daughters deserve to see manhood lived out in front of them so that as they're growing up and they're looking for, or a man, is looking for them, when that man approaches, they need to know what a man looks like. My son needs to know that when he approaches life, this is how a man approaches life. My wife deserves to have a man as a husband, right? And with every breath in my body, I want to do all that I can to give them that. And I want that for you out there too, brothers. So last week we talked about the battle of men versus vulnerability, because it's really a battle against ourselves, right? We talked about what vulnerability is and how we can seek to be more vulnerable and why we deserve the gift that vulnerability brings. Now, if you missed the episode, please go back and listen to episode 16. Y'all, it's good. And I've heard from both men and women about just how necessary it is. Today we have another topic that's going to be crazy. We're talking about how funhouse mirrors and ideas about masculinity both converge in the life of a man. Yo, this is episode 17 of the Pep Talk podcast, and I'm your host, Coach Jay. And we're going to dig right into this topic when we come back. Until then, y'all know what I'm going to say because the music is dope. The music is dope. Yes, I said it again. The music is dope. Jam to the music, people. Jam to the music. We'll be right back. We're back, and this is episode 17 of the Pep Talk podcast. And I'm just so thankful for each and every one of you. I love y'all. Like every click, every engagement on social media, every listen, every download, you all mean the world to me. And men, I'm thankful for you. I see you and I want you to know how valued you are. And that's why I'm doing this. And before I go any further, I also want you to know that if you're not a man, you still fit within the realms of this series. Listen, I heard from people last week who told me that even though they're not a man, they still pulled something away that was valuable for them. So that's why this whole series is called For Men and the People Who Love Us. It includes all of us, even though I'm specifically talking to my guys right now. So here's a question for you. Have you ever been inside of a funhouse? Like the whole idea has now it's been pretty perverted with, horror being the big thing, but it used to be that a fun house was just a fun house. Like you would roll up to a carnival or to a fair and it would have the happy fair carnival music going, and it'd be colorful and it's bright. Just no hint of menace in it at all. And you'd walk in, right? You'd pay your ticket, you'd walk in with your friends or siblings, and inside every bit of it was just fun stuff like the hamster wheel and all of these fun things. But there was always a portion of the fun house that was the big draw. And that was the fun house mirrors. Come on, somebody. Y'all remember the funhouse mirrors, right? Like one would make you really, really stretchy and thin and tall. The other would make you squat and compact, while another still would make you squiggly, and just wiggly. And all of the images are comical because you know that these are extreme, almost impossible misrepresentations of what we look like. And we would stand in those mirrors and we would laugh at one another, and it was all just innocent fun, right? But imagine with me that you left that fun house thinking that you actually looked like what those mirrors said that you did. Can you think about the harm that would be done? And I'm not trying to ruin a childhood memory by placing too much importance on the mirrors, because again, those are funhouse mirrors. But for the topic of what we're talking about today, the reflection that you see when you look in a mirror, it matters. And I think so many of us in our lives, men, so many of us are looking into funhouse mirrors to determine who we actually are. And yes, I'm talking about identity today because this is a very important topic in the life, in the behavior, in the perspectives of a man. Because mirrors, like the very thing that was created to give us a clear, quote unquote, view of ourselves, they can be corrupted. And when we pull who we are from distorted mirrors, then we come away with a distorted identity. And then the funhouse becomes a house of horrors. And those distorted identities lead to distorted perspectives. Those distorted perspectives lead to distorted relationships, right? And distorted relationships lead to a distorted life, a distorted purpose. And now everything in our lives are poisoned. And so, because identity is very, very important to men, it is very, very important to me. And I want to spend this episode talking about the distorted mirrors that give us these distorted reflections that we try to live out, but we're just incapable of doing. And if we're not careful, when we find our identity in these funhouse distorted mirrors, then we're setting ourselves up for a big fall and for a big fail. So we're going to talk about, I don't know how many, but I'm just going to talk about these until I don't have anything else to say about them, because y'all, I want to speak from my heart on this as a man to other men out there. And my hope is that as you're listening, you'll see yourself in one of these and know that you need to make a change. Because I've seen myself in these, and I've known that I've needed to make changes. So I pray that this blesses you. So this first funhouse mirror that I want to talk about is work. And while every man may not hold some primary sense of his identity to the job that he does, enough of us do. I found a Gallup poll, and this is a little older, from 2014, that said as many as 60% of men find their identity in their work. And I understand why, because society tells us that a man is defined by either what he does or how much he's bringing in. I mean, why do, when men get together, one of the things we ask each other is, so what do you do for work? It's almost like we're sizing one another up, or looking to establish some kind of a pecking order in maybe the way we see ourselves in relation to the men around us. However, work is a very fickle thing. Like I remember um, being fired from a job and questioning every ounce of worth that I had as a man. I remember having to work at a Walgreens when I had gone back to school to get my teaching certification, and feeling like less than a man because the work did not feel significant to me. And with the way that things are structured, y'all, work continues on. Like they can bury you today, they can fire you, lay you off today. That job is still going to go on with no regards for your sense of self or your sense of self-worth. So when we are attaching who we are to the work that we do, y'all, it doesn't matter what that work is. It could actually be like super important work. You could be the pastor of a church. You could be the CEO of a company. You could be a teacher or a principal or a car salesman or a door-to-door power washing guy. But when your identity is primarily tied and attached to your work, then what happens to you from that work is going to directly impact who you think you are. So what happens when you get fired and you begin to think that you're worthless, that you're no good? What happens when you're laid off and they don't tell you when you might be recalled, and you begin to feel like less than a man because you're no longer able to do those things that helped you feel like you were satisfying a deep urge of manhood within you? Men, work cannot be who you are. It can be what you do, but it cannot be who you are. Those have to be two separate things. And maybe you don't know if you are too tied up in your work. Okay? I have some questions for you. I always have questions, right? I have some questions for you. Number one, how much do you think about your job outside of the office? Is your mind frequently occupied with work-related thoughts, or is it difficult to participate in conversations with others that are not about your work? Okay, maybe a red flag. Number two, how do you describe yourself? And how much of this description is tied up in your job, your title, or your company? Or how often or how quickly do you tell people you've just met about your job? Number three, where do you spend most of your time? Has anyone ever complained to you that you're in the office too much? Number four, do you have hobbies outside of work that are not directly related to your work? Are you able to consistently spend your time exercising other parts of your brain? And number five, how would you feel if you could no longer continue in your profession? How distressing would this be to you? So answer these 5 questions, and I just want you to shoot me an email and let me know if where you are right now, if your identity is enmeshed in your work. And I understand that for older generations, this is a regular thing. But one of the things that I love about what I'm seeing from the workplace now is that people, and especially men, are doing more to distinguish themselves from what they do. I'm seeing more healthy away from work activities and practices that are helping men to further define or redefine themselves based on a different set of criteria other than what they do for work every day. And I'm here for it. I love it. And if you're a man out there who is doing this, you are on the path to health, and you are on the pathway to a more sustainable and balanced identity. So I applaud you. And if you're not there, it's cool. It's cool. You can get there. You just have to make the intentional steps to begin to disentangle yourself from who you are at work versus who you actually are as a man. All right, I'm going to talk about these next few relatively quickly. But the second one is money. Men define themselves, we define ourselves by how much money we're making, or how much money we have, or how much money we don't have. Yo, come on, somebody. Can we talk about that for a second? Right? Are you the same man when you have money as you are when you don't have money? Or if you've gotten used to having a certain amount of money and status, if that were taken away from you in one fell swoop, would you still feel like the same man? Or let's flip it. Let's say that you're broke right now. Like you don't have the kind of money that you know in your heart you should be making. But let's just say you win the lottery. Do you change who you are because your financial situation has changed? If that is the case, then your identity is tied up in your money. And as someone who has been in this situation, I can tell you that either side of the coin can be dangerous. And I can tell you that who you are is not what you make. It's not what you bring home. And I will tell you that your wife will love you no matter what you're bringing home, whether it's a little or whether it's a lot. Your kids will love you, whether you're bringing home a little or a lot, merely because you were you. And guys, when we allow money and finances to dominate who we see ourselves as, then we will never have a stable image of who we are. We will fluctuate based on how much money our bank account says we have. We will fluctuate based on how well our stocks are doing and all of these different things. And I am imploring you that whatever you have in the bank, whatever you have in by the way of stocks and funds, however much you're making from your job, don't let that define you. Don't let that represent who you are, because when it changes, and at some point it's going to change, you will be lost. I remember working in Walgreens as a man, a 30-year-old man working in Walgreens, because I had to bring some money home because I'd quit working to go back to school to become a teacher. And I remember working for basically minimum wage, and I had such a low opinion of myself because I didn't feel like I was able to contribute anything of worth to my household. And I had the greatest crisis of manhood and masculinity that I've ever had in my life because I felt utterly worthless. My wife was also teaching. She was bringing home more than I was. And y'all, as much as I'd said in my life leading up to that I didn't care if my wife made more than I did in that moment where I'm working the counter in Walgreens, checking folks out and watching them do their coupon tricks, I felt like garbage. Matter of fact, I felt lower than garbage. And I haven't even talked about this a whole lot. But I'm telling you this now to learn from me. Because my wife didn't care how much I was making. Because when she married me, I was working at an EB Games making $5.15 an hour, and she still married me based on the potential that she saw in me. Men, I'm telling you that the people who love you don't care what you have in your wallet. The people who love you don't care what you have in your financial portfolio. They love you because of what they see in you. And it's about time, men, that you begin to see into yourself what they're seeing so that you can have a balanced view and not be so subject to the changing of the tide. Your identity is not found in your finances. Your identity is not found in your achievements. Like you may have worked your way up the corporate ladder. That's awesome. And that's that's shown how good you are at your job. But even if you haven't, or even if you're the CEO or you work in the mailroom, who you are is not tied up in that. Because fortunes change. That achievement one day can be a failure the next. And if your identity is tied up in how well you were doing at this certain thing, then when you're not able to do it well, it's going to kill you. We hear it all the time from athletes who are having to transition away from this way of life that they've known all of their lives, performing on the field or on the court, to now not doing that because they've retired or because an injury has forced them to. They have a hard transition back into quote unquote regular life because they've been used to a certain lifestyle and a certain regimen, and their identity has been wrapped up in it. So now the question has become for them, who am I now that I'm not a professional athlete? Who am I now that I'm retired from this job, that the kids are out of the house? Who am I now that I'm not making as much money as I used to make? Who am I now that my life feels like a failure because I'm not achieving the heights that I used to? Come on, somebody. I'm talking to some brother out there who's having these exact thoughts, and I'm here to tell you that who you are is not dependent upon any of these things. It's not about your work. It's not about your money. It's not about your achievement. It's not about a disability. It's not about any of these things. All of these things are the funhouse mirrors that will trick us into seeing a form of ourselves that does not really exist. Men, my brothers, you deserve to see yourself truly as you really are. You deserve to form an opinion of yourself based on the reality of who you are, based on a clear, firm mirror that's going to give you a real direction. Not funhouse mirrors that are going to distort you and then leave you wondering if this is really who I am. And when we come back from this break, I want to give you some tips for developing a true identity because, men, it is important. It is important. I'll say it again. Our suicide rates are way too high. And that tells me that we are seeking for acclaim. We are seeking for definitions. We are seeking manhood, masculinity in the wrong places. And we have got to stop, brothers. I don't want to lose you. Your families don't want to lose you. Your friends don't want to lose you. And I don't want you to lose yourself. So we're going to take a short break. And when we come back with episode 17 of the Pep Talk podcast, we're going to talk about the steps to forming a firm identity. We'll be right back. Whew. Okay, we're back. I was just reviewing my notes for this segment and let's get into it, y'all. It's episode 17. We're talking about the funhouse mirror, right? We're talking about building a solid sense of self, a solid, balanced identity. Men, we've got to have it. We've got to have it. We've got to have it. And you know how you know that you have a strong sense of identity? Number one, you're not afraid to say no. You're not beholden to doing everything that people ask you to do. Because two, you know what you stand for. You know your core values and your core beliefs. And you allow those to lead you and not the applause of the crowd, not the pull of, the job, not the pull of the money. When you know what you stand for, you can walk away from $1 million deal and still sleep well at night. When you know what you stand for, you can walk away from a bad relationship. It may hurt, but you walked away because something is not lining up with who you know yourself to be. So when you have a solid sense of self, number one, you're not afraid to say no. Number two, you know what you stand for and you live your life based on your core beliefs and values. And three, other people see you as you see yourself. You no longer have 30 different identities and personalities. You're not presenting one way here and presenting another way in another place. You are presenting as you, fully and freely, unapologetically, with no issues. You are presenting as all you. Guys, you deserve. I said this last podcast. You deserve to be 100% of you. I'm convinced of it. And nobody can convince me of anything differently. You deserve it. You deserve it. Now, For me, building that sense of self, it starts with my relationship with God. Right. And I have to get that out of the way because for me, that is the most important piece to this. But I also want to talk about some different ways that you can go about building this strong identity. Okay. Um, so aside from identifying your core values and beliefs, I think that's step one. You got to know what you value and what you believe in because those two things are going to determine and speak to so many things in your life. They're going to determine how you interpret the stimuli that enter into your world. They're going to determine how you evaluate people who want to enter into your space. They're going to determine the jobs that you go out for, right? They're going to determine how you choose to spend your time. Your core values and beliefs are the biggest part of building your identity. And this has nothing to do with what you do, how much you make, or who you're dating. This is all about you. All right, so now that you have your core values and your beliefs, build a strong support system. You cultivate a stronger sense of identity by showing your true self, right? And by surrounding yourself with a supportive network of family and friends who accept and love you for who you are. They love you for who you are, but they also push you to be better, right? Because I think so many of us, we get stuck and we begin putting on these masks because we're not showing people who we really are. And when we do, we feel rejected. So we think that we have to conform to this idea of who people want us to be. But we're done doing that. Men, we're done doing that. We're being authentic because we know our core values, we know our core beliefs. So now we're building this support network, right? Right. Because we have to associate with others who value you and will love us in the ways that we need to be loved. Next, pursue your passions. Enacting your beliefs and pursuing your passions are ways to further develop this identity, which influences your self-worth. If you participate in activities that uplift your spirits, you will learn to accept yourself more. You've got to accept yourself. So many people, so many things in life are going to reject you. You have to be the one place that you can come back to and know, I'm not going to reject myself. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to put myself down. I'm not going to allow negative self-talk to ruin my life. I'm not going to do it. Man, are you willing to stand up to other people? Yeah, but are you willing to stand up to yourself and tell yourself, yo, no. This negative self-talk, nope, this is not happening. I'm not doing this. Pursue your passions. And also, guys, I said this last episode too. Seek therapy. Therapists can also help you fortify this identity, right? They can better help you understand what's going on in the background, what may have happened in the past that has caused your identity to become so warped that you're seeking it in all these different places. A coach can help you too. So can a pastor. So can prayer. I'm a Christian, y'all. What do you expect me to say? For me, God is the answer. But God has also given us therapists, and God has also given us coaches, and God has also given us networks. So we have the tools in front of us. When are we going to start using them to be better? When are we going to start using them to help us develop an identity that will enhance our lives and enhance the lives of those around us? And I would be remiss, I almost didn't say this, but I need to say it. Guys, your identity is also not based on how much sex you're having. That does not come into play in any sense. If you're basing who you are based on what you're smashing or not smashing, guys, that is an issue. It's time to grow up. We got to do better. I'm here to cheer you on and to coach you up. This is the coach talking. Guys, we've got to do better. We cannot use our relationships. We cannot use the women that we're with or that we're not with. We can't use them to determine who we are. That's not fair to them. Your identity is a you thing. I've given you some tips for how you can develop a stronger sense of self. I want you to take them. I want you to use them. I want you to share them with the guys that you know. And I also want to know, what other tips do you have to help guys have a strong sense of identity, a stronger sense of identity, because we need it. I don't have all the answers, but we can work together to get this information out there. So please send me an email at thepeppodcast@gmail.com. And I will share some of your responses out on social media this week because we need all the help that we can get. And I think together we can do more than just one man with the podcast. Pep Squad, I need you. Ladies, I need you. What are some things that you've seen in the men in your life that have helped them to develop a stronger sense of identity? And also, how has it had an impact with you and your relationship and your family? Like, what does that look like on the other end? I want the other perspective. Ladies, when you have a man who knows who they are, how does that impact your lives? I want to share some of those out as well. So again, email me at thepeppodcast@gmail.com. When we come back, I'm going to give you the quote of the day, and we're going to wrap this puppy up, all right? Episode 17, Pep Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Coach J. Spitting real talk for the men today. Love you. We'll be right back. All right, our quote of the day is from Oscar Wilde. And it says, most people are other people. Their thoughts are someone else's opinions. Their lives a mimicry. Their passions a quotation. You need to go back and listen to that one again. I need to go back and listen to that one again. And we need to resolve within ourselves that we're not going to be a mimicry. We're not going to be somebody else's opinion. We're not going to be somebody else's quotation. We're going to be solid in who we are. And we're just going to live and enjoy life and love the people who were with us. You heard me? Come on, man. Come on. We can do better. And we will do better. I am my brother's keeper. I want to hold you accountable, but I also want to lift you up. Now, you don't want to miss next week's episode. I tried to avoid it, but I think I'm going to have to do it. We're going to be talking about communication and relationships, guys. And yeah, I don't know what else is going to be included, but just based on the topic, I know it's going to be good. So I want to see you back here next week for episode 18 of the Pep Talk Podcast. But today, we're closing out episode 17. Y'all, thank you for listening. Hey, listen, keep hitting those reviews, keep leaving those ratings, keep reaching out, keep letting me know what you like and what you don't like. Matter of fact, I want to know what you don't like about the podcast so far. I want to know how I can make things better for you. So I need those emails. I need you to reach out on social media @_JB Speaks, at Pep Talk Pod on TikTok. Y'all ain't gonna see me dancing, trust me. But I want to know how I can make this space better for you, how I can better serve the Pep Squad out there. I love y'all, and I want this to be valuable, value-added time that you spend here with me. Y'all, I love you so much. Thank you for hanging out. Share this episode with somebody, and you remember how we always close. Keep it love, keep it light, and keep it pepper. I'll see you next time. Y'all be blessed.